Ladies and gentlemen, dear participants, dear friends, IENE welcomes you again in this webinar, particularly in this session. Regarding generally speaking about the energy issues, I consider our generation very lucky, since it participates, or at least observes, this very interesting energy transformation of our time, certainly with a lot of difficulties and challenges. One of these challenges, a great one, is the future of the gas markets. Natural gas, where it replaces more polluting fuels, reduces air pollution and limits emission of CO2. The World Energy Outlook 2020 IEA study found that switching to natural gas has already helped to limit the rise of global emissions since 2010, certainly alongside the deployment of renewables and improvements in energy efficiency. But for EU, this is not enough. Gas can bring environmental benefits, but remains a source of emissions. So the natural gas, as we know it, has a certain period of life. The Green Deal of EU and the total decarbonization by 2050 defines the final route and the end of the life for this fuel. Under the EU stated energy and climate policies with respect to 2030 targets, there is a clear preference against any further investment in gas infrastructure in view of its abandonment over the next even 10 up to 15 years and its substitution with hydrogen, biomethane, and renewables. And this is the point where a lot of questions are arising. What is the future of the existing gas infrastructure? Which are the necessary modifications we need to make in order to use hydrogen? Have you solved all the technical issues? What about the timetable and the cost issue to produce cost-competitive hydrogen? What about the recent built infrastructures and what about the planned ones? What is the position of the oil companies, particularly the bigger ones? Especially in Southeast Europe, all countries have firm plans encouraging further gas use for power generation, industrial and commercial use, and for domestic applications. Already we see much increased gas use in the region, and hence we're witnessing a strong inconsistency in the region between the EU targets and local government applied policies in favor of further gas use. So what will be the outcome of such, let's say, confrontation? I hope really that all these questions, this panel will try the best to give the proper answers. Said that, I would like to invite our first speaker of today, and I'm going to give the floor to Mr. Chatzimarkakis. I don't know if we have Mr. Ellinas with us, but even in this case, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Chatzimarkakis because he has an urgent need since we are delayed in the webinar from the first row. Mr. Chatzimarkakis, you have the floor.
Many thanks for the opportunity to speak as a first speaker, and sorry to step out as of 16 o'clock sharp. Thanks for the outline, and thanks also for the invitation to this important aspect. As you mentioned, we are in the midst of a transition, and possibly hardly any generation has seen that before. Hydrogen has, during the last year, I would say, emerged to one of the enablers of this transition to make it affordable and possibly also faster. I would like to concentrate here with my presentation on the issue of infrastructure. What is needed in order to have a hydrogen-ready infrastructure? We are on very good terms with the other renewable energies like biomethane, like electricity, also in a certain sense to second generation biofuels. However, I would like to concentrate here on hydrogen aspects, and I will use the presentation that I also made at the Portuguese presidency. That's why you see here the symbols of the Portuguese presidency a little bit earlier. So just as an introduction, hydrogen will become a crucial energy vector, and vector is much more than just a carrier, because it can also store energy. And we believe, and we are convinced, it will be the other leg of the energy transition alongside renewable electricity. It will, and that's important, replace coal, oil, but also gas across different segments of the economy. The rapid development of hydrogen is not only important for meeting the EU's climate objectives, but also for preserving and enhancing the EU's industrial and economic competitiveness. I may say this here at the very beginning that especially affected areas or regions that have seen the Green Deal, having the European Green Deal in mind, might be affected by job losses, with the help of hydrogen technologies, could not just ramp up and save these jobs by adapting them to the new technologies, but also create new job profiles. When it comes to the realization of this roadmap, we foresee 3 timelines. The first line is 2020 to 2025. We call it the kickstart phase. And with regards to the hydrogen infrastructure roadmap, this is the time where fast tracking of initial projects that achieve the European goal of 1 million tons of renewably produced hydrogen by 2024 takes place. Today, for example, there was a matchmaking of the member states with regards to the important projects of common European interest. And some of the projects that will be discussed and are promoted by the governments, including many governments of the southeast of Europe, are encompassing also infrastructure. Also, we see in this phase 20 to 25, the captive production, blending of hydrogen into existing methane, natural gas infrastructure, the coming up of so-called hydrogen valleys around ports normally, but also in special regions like Western Macedonia and Northern Greece, where we see the delignification taking place, and of course the IPCIs that I mentioned already. The second phase will be from 25 to 35. Until then, the kickoff will have taken place. There will be more volume of hydrogen, and possibly the price of hydrogen will go down from champagne to Prosecco. In this ramp-up phase, these 10 years, the plan is to bring the price even down to table water. And what will happen? We will see hydrogen valleys being built up and also connected by pipelines even more so. And this connection of hubs, basically ports and harbors like Rotterdam, Antwerp, Sines in Western Europe, but of course Piraeus in Eastern Europe, Southeastern Europe, will play a big role. And connecting these hubs will create basically the pan-European hydrogen backbone. That's the infrastructure that we will build upon. And that's a very, very important step by connecting them to have also a backbone all over Europe. Of course, a precondition of hydrogen produced in Southeast Europe, but also in Northern Africa or in the MENA region, the Gulf region, to be transported cheaply along these pipelines. And blending hydrogen with natural gas still remains an important factor. However, we would call it a transition technology because blending is not as efficient as the use of pure hydrogen. After 35, we see the market growth phase where large parts of the natural gas infrastructure will be converted, repurposed to hydrogen as well. Difficult to say whether it will be all of it. I would say that there will be a quite colorful mix of different pipeline systems. We might need also pipelines, we will need pipelines for synthetic fuels as exist today for kerosene, so e-kerosene. We will possibly see CO2 pipelines because the synthetic fuels might need CO2, biogenic or circular CO2, to be put into a process with it. Now, let me elaborate a little bit on the kickstart and the ramp-up phase from 2025 to 2035. Sorry for the missing 5 there. Blending with natural gas is a transitional option in regions without a parallel duplicated networks or potentially available gas infrastructure capacity to be easily repurposed in the short term. If we set the right blending percentage and inject it carefully in selected locations in high or mid-pressure transport natural gas pipelines, we can also inject them into salt cavern where hydrogen can be stored, and this is all possible and will happen during that time. Also, as I alluded to, the building of a pan-European hydrogen backbone infrastructure will take place. It is necessary to physically transport hydrogen, and it's crucial for a liquid hydrogen gas market, as it is the cheapest form to transport hydrogen. Hydrogen backbones will connect areas of low-cost clean hydrogen production, like Southeast Europe or Southwest Europe also, or Northern Africa, with large-scale storage and demand centers elsewhere, especially in the center of Europe. We will find these demand centers. And then the hydrogen valleys will be built with regional and local hydrogen infrastructure. So hydrogen applications combined into an integrated ecosystem will be found there. The hydrogen demand will be connected to this infrastructure. Also local storage, like happening in the Netherlands already, or import or the export of hydrogen by trucks, by train, by ship. Ports will play, as I said already, a very, very important role in that strategy. And also there will be synergies with other renewable offshore strategies, especially the 300 gigawatt offshore initiative of the European Union will be part of it. This is how this could look like in combination with offshore wind. So we might, and we will see the hubs or the production of hydrogen also offshore, and then the transport could happen using existing or newly built pipelines, especially in the North Sea. We see examples where an offshore pipeline system exists in a dense way. We call that hydrogenables, and we see that this is a case for reaping renewable energy systems with hydrogen synergies to develop this offshore infrastructure. The offshore platforms can carry the electrolyzers and will be directly connected to offshore wind power production. Repurposed, retrofitted offshore pipelines will be transporting hydrogen to shore, to hydrogen valleys, or further along the EU hydrogen network. And also the offshore platforms as a hydrogen hub at sea can supply hydrogen to ships in transit. Here we see a visual from the European Hydrogen Backbone Initiative from 2020. This work that started last year is definitely ongoing. There was bad news so far from the French ecosystem because France was building much more on cables than on pipeline infrastructure. But this has changed now recently. France Hydrogène, so even the French ecosystem has changed their views on that. And you can see that especially in the very dense northwestern part of Europe, this is already converged into hydrogen fit infrastructure. So by 2050, renewable electricity, hydrogen, and other renewable low-carbon gases will have substantially replaced natural gas, oil, and coal demand. Europe will have an integrated system of hydrogen backbones, which covers the entire continent and connects to neighboring regions. On-site conversion of renewable electricity into hydrogen and shipping. On-site fueling will become more and more relevant, both for use in industry, maritime, and heavy-duty transport, whereby in maritime we see not only hydrogen, but ammonia derived from hydrogen as one important fuel. In the end, end-use appliances and equipment are converted or adapted by hydrogen. You can see that Southeast is not yet part of all this planning, but of course, EastMed and also the Trans-Adriatic pipeline could easily be connected to it. We are currently at our engineering of bigger projects, of big, large-scale flagship projects, including White Dragon, so the project in Greece, which has been also reported in the Greek press with approximately 8 billion of investment. But this is definitely connected to Italy via the Trans-Adriatic pipeline. So this all takes place. I think I'll stop my presentation here. I'm not going through the last slide, as this might be very, very specifically towards the regulatory issues that we need to have. What I can say, though, is that we would need a distinct hydrogen legislation. We will see next week's some specification on the Renewable Energy Directive by the European Commission, where a lot of links to hydrogen are already given. But there will be a second legislative approach end of this year. It's called the Smart Energy Sector and System Integration Package, which is foreseen for the low carbon gases, because we also need to see that other technologies rather than renewables like pyrolysis, splitting methane, natural gas into hydrogen and carbon black or carbon solid, will play a fundamental role in the years to come. And of course, also carbon capture sequestration from biomethane following an SMR, so steam methane reforming, will play a big role in the production of hydrogen, and will play also a minus effect, will have a minus effect on CO2 emissions, as you take CO2 basically from circular or from biogenic sources, non-fossil, and store them and capture them and store them. This will have a positive minus effect. I'll stop here and thank you.
Yes, George. Yes. Okay, Jorgo, we thank you very much. We thank you for informing us and giving us the whole picture. Just before leaving the room, I would like to ask you, what about how easy or difficult is the transformation of existing infrastructure to accept hydrogen? Just with 2 words, because we don't have enough time.
With 2 words, very old pipelines would fit, because town gas had a lot of hydrogen, and very new pipelines would fit. The hydrogens that have been foreseen for natural gas, so from the 70s to the 90s, they need a retrofitting investment cost of 25% of new build. So it's doable.
Who's going to absorb this cost?
Well, first of all, if we see the current legislation, the current infrastructure is stranded asset, right? So investors would not. But if you do the retrofitting or the repurposing, then a stranded asset becomes an asset for another 100, 150, 200 years. So I think it's worth investing it, and it will be public investment to a big part, European investment, and there will be some private investment as well.
Thank you very much, George, for having you. Let's move now to our next speaker, who is Mr. Charles Ellinas. Good to have you with us. So let's proceed with your presentation. And okay, thank you.
First
Please,
of all,
you have the floor.
thank you. First of all, apologies for earlier on. I had some technical glitches, unfortunately, with the new laptop.
It happens. Don't worry.
So today I will talk about the recent shakeup of the international oil companies and the impact this is going to have on the development of the EastMed. All of us have put a lot of effort, a lot of faith on EastMed, but how far is it going to go? So first of all, let me start with some global developments. The world has veered decisively towards bringing climate change issues to the forefront, not only in terms of energy, but also politically. And the largest banks and investment institutions are committing to a low carbon future. Now, the question is no longer just peak oil or peak gas, but also peak oil investment. Is that investment going to be available to maintain exploration and production in the oil and gas sector? And the international oil companies themselves are now being forced to adjust and operate in this highly challenging environment. The recovery from COVID-19 has brought higher prices, which is welcomed by the industry as oil and gas demand increases and as prices increase. But only 2 weeks ago, the International Energy Agency has called time on the fossil fuel industry by saying that no new oil and gas exploration should take place after 2025. Bit far-fetched, but that's what they said. This creates a huge problem for all IOCs and financing on new projects. Within the EU, there are also other developments making it more difficult for gas. The IEA's call may not be practical or feasible at present, and it's not clear how the world will get to clean energy yet, but it is fueling the climate change debate and activists who are piling the pressure on the oil companies. And this is happening more and more. It is affecting the role of natural gas as a cleaner transition fuel, at least in Europe and the Western world increasingly. And yet the IEA is also warning that investment in renewables is only a third of what is needed. In other words, as things stand, renewables alone will not provide the energy the world needs. So why stop oil and gas production if you don't have replacement? It's a contradiction that needs to be debated. In Europe, gas is facing an existential crisis as a result of new climate change policies that are now affecting investment in new natural gas projects and plants. Recently, Frans Timmermans, European Commission Vice President, in March actually, said that there will only be a marginal role for fossil gas in the path to net zero emissions by 2050, with gas demand expected to drop substantially by 2030. And this shows the results of a study by the European Commission, which shows that by 2030, gas demand in Europe should drop by, say, 20%, and then gradually by 75 to 80% if these new policies are going to take hold. And I say should because this still needs to be demonstrated. But let's talk about the big oil sector shakeup. In May, the big oil sector faced major problems. First of all, a court in the Netherlands, as you probably know, ordered Shell to cut emissions by as much as 45% by 2030, not just from its operations, but more importantly, from the oil and gas it sells and the products it sells, which makes it very hard. And in the US, shareholders backed activist investors at ExxonMobil's AGM, who won three board seats, promising to basically force the company to move more and more towards renewables and same way as BP and Shell, and cut production of oil. Chevron shareholders approved the proposal to force the company to substantially cut pollution based on the products it sells, not just its own operations. In order to achieve carbon emission cuts at these scales, the IOCs will be forced to make substantial cuts to their oil and gas production and divert future investments decisively into cleaner energy. The activists that achieve these wins are now emboldened, and they are determined to try and drive more change within the IOCs. And in the Western world, this is possible. A growing number of IOC shareholders agree with IEA's a call for asking for more drastic action to be taken to combat climate change. Very clearly, winds of change are blowing throughout the entire industry that cannot be ignored. Massive shifts in clean energy technologies are making the transition increasingly easier, but it will take time. ExxonMobil and Chevron are not rushing to change their modes of operation, but more of this later. This is the result of a study by the IEA on achieving net zero by 2050. This is what needs to be done to achieve net zero. Oil production has, in their eyes, should have already peaked, and it should go down from now onwards to as low as 10% of current use by that time. And LNG exports should peak by 2025 and drop dramatically from there onwards. This is a wish list. It's not reality. But the IEA says that if you want to achieve net zero by 2050, this is what you need to do. But it's not all doom and gloom for the oil and gas industry. Asia does not appear to be ready to follow these developments. Globally, demand for hydrocarbons continue to be robust. And these developments will not change that for some time. Even Ben Verbeerden, Shell CEO, said that if the IOCs do not supply this oil and gas, someone else will. And the national oil companies, such as Saudi Aramco and Rosneft, are ready to step in and do exactly that. They are actually stepping up their investments now. Activism does not apply to them and their countries, and they're committed to continue with oil and gas production as long as needed. Demand for oil and gas will continue, and exploration will be important for a while yet. Energy transition will not happen overnight. But as far as the EastMed is concerned, it's actually what happens to the IOCs that matters, not to the NOCs. The IOCs are the companies on which the EastMed depends to materialize. And they are under pressure, increasing pressure, both in the European Union and the United States with Biden as president. As a result of these developments, the IOCs are already planning to spend a lot less, with the risk that later in this decade, supply shortages may lead to higher prices. The trend for the IOCs will be contraction to core regions and projects with less appetite to take on new areas. That could be a problem for the EastMed. It's a problem in coming. They're being forced to concentrate on higher returns, lower carbon, based on lower capital and cost programs, by investing in only the highest return projects. So, what is the impact on the EastMed? These changes will have a major impact on the operations worldwide, but also including the EastMed and Cyprus EZ. And as I said, we can't count on the NOCs to come and save us. It's the IOCs that we depend on. And if they stop spending, we have a problem. Not only is EastMed gas is expensive to develop and get to the markets, but the recent regional turmoils caused by a belligerent Turkey, the Libyan instability, the lingering Israeli-Lebanon disputes, and the Israeli-Palestinian flare-ups are also becoming too challenging for the IOCs to tackle. As operations, exploration, and production in the EastMed and Cyprus EZ, as I said before, are led by the IOCs, these developments will have a ripple effect on the EastMed. They are bound to affect future investments and plans substantially. the region needs to wake up to this fast evolving situation and adjust accordingly. Egypt and Israel have already realized that, and they're giving emphasis on domestic consumption, as Gina said earlier on. It will even affect the famous East Med gas pipeline. I don't want to say much more, but it's becoming a project of the past already. So what is the future of energy in the East Med? The East Med is no longer a high priority for the IOCs, who are battling for survival in a fast-changing energy world. The priority is to get transition right, and their future development strategies are geared in that direction. Similarly, the East Med countries must reassess their own energy plans. Outdated policies based on exports developed during the last decade require complete overhaul. Plans based on exports to global markets are fast becoming untenable. The future is regional, with natural gas developed to support the wider deployment of increasingly cheaper renewables.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you, Charles, for the excellent and clear presentation. We have given to us the whole picture concerning the IOCs, and of course, we have to take that into consideration. Okay, now let me invite the next speaker of our panel, which is Mr. Nikos Satras, Head of Natural Gas Business Unit, MotorOil Greece. Mr. Satras, you have the floor.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you very much for the invitation to IENE and Mr. Costas. I'm Nikos Satras, representing MotorOil, an oil company, and definitely I'm going to present our views for the current developments in the gas market in Greece, and also our aspirations for going into the next decade and our investment decisions for moving forward to gas power and renewables. The first slide is about the oil and gas and FSRU project. It's our, let's say, most emblematic and most important project in this area of gas in the gas market. We believe it's going to play a role as a new Southeast European natural gas gateway, enhancing definitely the security of supply by providing 80% more LNG storage, especially into the southern part of the Greek system and the Southeast European system. It will be giving a lot of operational flexibility, which is something that we really should have more investments and more infrastructure serving that purpose. And it will help also with competitive pricing and the possibility to buy natural gas and especially LNG from everywhere in the world, not from specific geographical locations. And most importantly, it will give also the opportunity to develop very specifically for Greece, a very important sector, which is the small scale and bunkering LNG. And having said that, I believe it's time to say that natural gas is not it's not common for everybody in Greece. It's not common for everybody in Southeast Europe. It's not that the grid has expanded to most geographical areas. We need to move this form of energy also to places that have energy isolation in form of gas, which is Peloponnese, which is the western part of Greece, and also it's the islands. So in order to support such investments and such expansion, we need to take a decision and make clear decisions on the regulation and what we really want to invest. And if it is allowed for gas to play a role into the next decade and to bring that form of energy into most parts of Greece and also of Southeast Europe that don't have this privilege. So we need clear regulation and clear signals from the EU to foster such investments, because investors definitely want to have clear signals and at least an horizon of 10 to 15 years in order to get a payback of their investments. So the oil and gas is the FSRU project. It gives a complete set of services, bundle and unbundled services of berthing and loading, storage, regasification, also including bunkering for small barges and truck loading, because it will have access of LNG pipeline to the shore so that we can develop a full-scale LNG truck loading. The strategic position is in the heart of the Greek natural gas system, near the big centers of consumption, Athens, the power plants in Peloponnese, and also next to the power plants in Vietia. The project status is we're at an exciting moment where we have been included in a 10-year development plan, and we're ready to sign the contract with DESFA for the construction of the metering station to become the entry point, one of the entry points into the natural Greek system. We're ready to start the engineering, the front-end engineering, which will last until the end of this year, which also will support the licensing of the environmental, the safety studies, and that will lead also to the installation and construction permitting next year. Our target is to start operations by the end of 2023, which is a challenging target, and we will have to struggle to achieve that. But we believe that the time is of essence. The time is now. If we don't invest and support such investments right now, in 3 or 4 years down the road, it will be maybe too late, and there will not be enough, let's say, time to develop such investments. The time will be lost. So we think this is the time right now. Apart from this FSRU, we are building also in other forms of natural gas to bring this form of energy to the customers. CNG is one of the applications. We have started with industrial application. Also, we're complementing, let's say, the CNG offering to the Greek consumers for retail stations. And we believe that the retail station of the future will include electricity. It will include natural gas, and in a different form or maybe different timing, it could also include hydrogen. So we're also thinking and designing the retail station of the future, how this should be, and surely it will have a much smaller energy footprint. So it should also reduce the consumption of energy for itself. For the small-scale LNG, it is starting in Greece. It is starting with Vitusa TLT next January. A big question is, how far do we want to take this investment, and if it's going to become a niche market, or if we want to invest big time in LNG for small-scale application, and especially for marine fuel. I'm just saying that because if we don't have a clear signal, not only us as MotorOil or as investors, but also as ship owners or the industry as a whole. Should we invest in LNG as marine fuel, or should we wait for alternative fuels, maybe lower carbon fuels or solutions for the future? Okay, the technology that we need to study and we need to assess will be very intense in the next couple of years. But to invest in such a big sector, and we need very clear signals right now in order to support these investments, especially I'm talking about the global marine bunkering. But it's important to have a certainty of at least 10 or 15 years in order to make these investments and make them successful ones. Surely, those are the applications for the natural gas. But we also think we have experience with hydrogen. We are building and we are improving continuously the production in our refinery. We're building new facilities to improve our production. But to produce hydrogen, we will have an excess in our hydrogen production from next year. And we do have plans for small-scale applications, even green hydrogen, or larger scale with the blue hydrogen. We want to become part of the hydrogen economy. We participate also in the hydrogen and the white dragon that was mentioned before by Mr. Chatzimarkakis. We can build on our skills and competencies. We know the technology. We have experience of decades with hydrogen. We also want to be part of the new investments and the new economy, and it's going to become one of the pillars for our development in the future. Nevertheless, let me stress that everything has a cost. We want to invest also in infrastructure projects, in pipelines. Our FSRU will be ready for hydrogen, so definitely the pipeline will withstand any sorts of hydrogen, but we're all connecting to traditional, let's say, network of DESFA, which is not that old. It's not depreciated yet. So the question of how many infrastructures we can build, purely hydrogen, a mixture of hydrogen or biomethane or whatever, these are difficult questions. We all have to participate, and we all have to take investment decisions for where we want to direct our efforts and our money. Thank you very much. I'll be happy to take questions at the end of the session. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Satras, we thank you very much. We thank you for your presentation, for informing us especially about this particular FSRU project. And now, Mr. Papanastasiou, Mr. Constantinos Papanastasiou, member of the board of directors of CYGAS in Cyprus, has the floor.
Yeah, participants, it is my pleasure and my honor to be part of today's webinar. Today, I'm going to briefly present you the project of the Cyprus Natural Gas Public Company, DESFA, for the introduction of LNG to the Republic of Cyprus. As you understand, this is the first and transition step of Cyprus to pass from the liquid fuel era to the hydrogen and renewables era that the previous presenters have presented. This is the Cyprus LNG import terminal project that has going on for some time now, and the main elements of which is the acquisition of an FSRU. At a later slide, we are going to see the details of this FSRU, the construction of a jetty for FSRU berthing and mooring equipment, the construction of the jetty-borne gas pipeline and loading arms, the construction of an onshore gas pipeline, and other infrastructure required, such as the buffer solution, etc. So the tender was tendered out in October 2018. The contract execution and selected contractor was granted in December 2019, and the work started in October 2020, and the expected completion is going to be in October 2022. As I said, that the LNG import project comprised of the infrastructure. The contract was awarded to the consortium of the JV between China Petroleum Pipeline Engineering and Metron SA, with Hudong Shipbuilding and Wilkinson Ship Management Limited. Then the owner's engineer, this is the contract for our consultant engineers for the oversight and implementation of the project. This was awarded to the consortium of Hill International with Veritas Solution and with Trackbell and Gazosin. And lastly, the insurance advisors was awarded to Aon UK Limited. This contract is necessary in order to secure the necessary pool of insurances for the operations of the project. In regards to the project financials, we have secured an EU grant of 40% of the capex with a maximum of 101 million. Then our partner in the JV, the Electricity Authority of Cyprus, has provided us with an equity contribution of 43 million. So the equity component is up to 144 million. And we have secured credit financing from the European Investment Bank of up to 150 million. loan with 20 years duration and favorable terms, and a loan of up to 80 million from the European Bank of Reconstruction and Development, EBRD. These are one of the last, as mentioned before, credit financing from supranational banks such as EIB and EBRD. And because they understood the necessity for Cyprus to move from the liquid fuel era first to the natural gas era and then to the hydrogen and renewables era. So they understood that this is just the transition step necessary for going from the step 1 to step 3. Now, the technical description. We have secured overall funding of 374 million, which is more than enough to cover the capex of 269 million. This is the total capex of the project, plus other costs and cost overruns, possible cost overruns. Now, about the technical description, this shows us the cross-section of the jetty trestle and the jetty platform. We're going to have a jetty of construction on piles of 1.3 kilometers, and the implementation of time frame is 24 months from the commencement of works. With the FSRU, this is based on the conversion of a LNG carrier, Galea, and that was owned by Shell Tankers Singapore Private Limited, and the conversion works is currently undergoing at the shipyard in China. The FSRU will be classified as both as a LNG carrier and an FSRU. On the same time, the offshore pipe works have begun with onshore gas facilities. So, as I said, the implementation time frame is 24 months from the commencement of works and anticipated to be completed by October 2022. The vessel, Galea, an liquid and LNG carrier, was built in 2002 by Mitsubishi Heavy Industries. It's a MOS containment system with 5 tanks with overall LNG storage capacity of 136,000 cubic meters. In dimensions, has an overall length of 290 meters, breadth of 46 meters, and the propulsion is a steam dual fuel. This is a graph of the vessel. Now, after conversion from an LNG carrier to an FSRU, the vessel will be equipped with a state-of-the-art regasification modular unit delivered by Wärtsilä, and the terminal will be capable of receiving LNG from LNG carriers ranging from 120,000 cubic meters to 217 cubic meters, so the Q-flex types of LNG carriers. This is the site. There was a remediation of the works that occurred between 2019 and 2020 because there was some contamination known to us from the beginning in the area due to phosphorgypsum. The site contamination has been fully remediated. Now, here is a photo of the FSRU at the arrival at the shipyard in China in 2020. Now, we talk about the infrastructure of the LNG project, the import terminal. Now, in parallel, DESFA, which is the major shareholder in the SPV that will own the LNG import terminal with 70% participation. DESFA will also be responsible for the LNG supply. We have proceeded with the procurement process. This is a two-stage process. The expression of interest, the pre-qualification process has been completed, and the evaluation of the expression of interest has been completed. And then we will move to the second stage. The Cyprus LNG demand will be allotted between an SPA and MSAs. The SPAs will cover the base load quantities, while MSAs will be used for supplementary cargoes. Therefore, as the TSO will be responsible also for the pipeline network development, the transmission system will have hydrogen-ready specs, so will allow in the future for future developments, such as a blend between hydrogen and natural gas, or as other participants mentioned, guest speakers mentioned earlier. Other natural gas consuming markets that we are currently evaluating is the bunkering, road transport, or off-grid stations. As I said, the introduction of LNG to the Republic of Cyprus is a project of common interest. It's something that is necessary, and this is understood by both the European Union, the supranational banks that finance the project, in order for Cyprus to pass from the liquid fuel era to the natural gas era as an intermediary step, and then to the renewables and hydrogen era. It will end the energy isolation of the Republic of Cyprus. It will diversify the energy sources. It will strengthen the security of supply. It will possibly reduce the cost of energy, and will have a major environmental positive impact. That's all from me. Thank you. And I will be answering any questions, either now or at the end.
Okay, Mr. Papanastasiou, we thank you very much. We thank you about all the information regarding the LNG project in Cyprus. Of course, we're going to discuss a little bit later during the Q&A period. Now, I'm going to give the floor to Mr. Panagiotis Panousos, the Energy Transition Manager of DESFA, Greece. Mr. Panousos.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me in this event. Quite happy to be with you in this panel. A lot of things have been already discussed from previous speakers. So I'm Panagiotis Panousos, working as Energy Transition Manager in DESFA. And as always, first of all, I will go through a basic introduction of my company. So DESFA is the gas system operator in Greece. DESFA is responsible for the operation of the national gas transmission system, the high pressure system, and also for the LNG terminal situated in Rivithous Island. DESFA was established in 2007, so in a way we are 14 years old. We followed the EU unbundling rules. We have been certified in 2019 as ownership unbundled operator following the third energy package lines. Our role here is to operate, maintain, develop the Greek national gas transmission system in a safe, reliable, and economically efficient way. The services that we offer, first of all, are the regulated third-party access services, as we have to, and these are offered in a transparent and non-discriminatory way. And then we also offer a range of non-regulated services to clients, either national or international. Regarding our shareholders, 66% is owned by consortiums and Fluga. And if we see who participates in this consortium, we have three major European TSOs and one big energy company, Greek energy company, and the rest, 34%, is state-owned. In all these years, what we have managed is to be a reliable partner in the area. How did we achieve this? By operating the network with safety, most of all, by developing the system according to the market needs, by diversifying the supply sources, by developing new services, by training continuously our people, by working on the development of a competitive market, by reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, and by participating in international groups, activities, projects. Here you can see some facts regarding our network. So we operate a network of approximately 1,500 kilometers, high-pressure pipelines. There are 4 interconnections. There are 2 dispatching centers, 1 compressor station, 1 LNG site for storage and regasification, 53 metering and regulating stations, 6 operation maintenance centers, and 22 exit points to medium or consumers directly. I will just put some special stress here in our Revithousa LNG terminal, which is offering a lot of to the diversification of supply sources and security of supply, not only in Greece, but also in the area. And now we are in the phase of developing new activities. We are developing a truck loading facility and also a small-scale LNG jetty. Thus, we will be able to open a new market for Greece, the small-scale LNG market, by creating what we call a virtual grid. We say that we stand at a crossroad, and this is an interesting area in Europe, but actually it has a lot of difficulties. We are in the southeast end of the continental Europe. Not easy to create interconnections, but still we are investing, we're still investing, we're creating new extensions, new branches of our pipeline towards Western Macedonia, towards Western Greece and Peloponnese. We are creating new interconnections with adjacent systems. I will mention North Macedonia, TAP, a new interconnection, and also Greece, Bulgaria. We are creating connections with other facilities like the FSRU facility, which will be developed in Alexandroupoli. We are interested to participate in the underground gas storage, which is to be developed, the first one to be developed in Greece. We, as I said, are developing the small-scale LNG and truck loading stations and facilities. So these are some facts, and as you can see, we have a growing market, gas market in Greece. What you can also see from this slide is that we have created a lot of pluralism in sources, actually mostly coming from LNG vessels. Still, the consumption is dominated by power production. Most of it goes, of the gas used goes to power production. Now, I will move forward to the topic actually of the current panel regarding energy transition and the challenges that we see in our area. So we are in an area with some specificities. And I'm not talking just about Greece, I'm talking about the whole area. There are interconnections missing. Diversification of supplies is not enough. Liquidity and markets are still developing. There are areas not covered even by gas grid. There are areas which are phasing out lignite, and the solution, the direct solution for this is natural gas. We can easily substitute it. And basic infrastructure and market elements are still missing. So we don't have full reverse flows. There are compressor stations perhaps missing, storage is missing, and some network reinforcement. Regarding future prospects, because it is an area with future prospects, we have to keep in mind that we are in proximity with Middle East and North Africa. So these are areas where potentially they can produce renewable gases in the future. And as we have ports and ships, and this is something promising, at least for our country, that we can become a transfer corridor for renewable gases towards the rest of Europe. There are opportunities also for low-cost production. We have wind, we have solar power. So these are opportunities that we must take the advantage. Also, there is an infrastructure in place. We're used to say that gas moves from north to south, but with renewable gases, this corridor can have a reverse flow. Actually, it really has, even now with natural gas, reverse flows. But in the future, with renewables, it can be a business case for us that we can support the North through this system. Regarding infrastructure development and sustainability, we understand that sustainable development is something new. There are big opportunities for us, for the whole area, but decarbonization has to come with an affordable societal cost. And how can we achieve this? By using the current infrastructure that we have and reducing as much as possible the needs for new infrastructure. For sure, there must be new investments. We cannot deny that, but whatever we do must be what we say future-proof. Now, regarding the energy transition, as it was said already, it will not happen overnight. There must be certain steps. What you see on the left is not an analysis per sector, it's just some thoughts that let's start from transportation. And when we say transportation, it's road transportation. It can be rail, it can be ships. So there are different elements behind that. What we see, apart from what can be easily electrified, like private cars, for example, LNG will have a role for sure for maritime, and that perhaps will be the fuel to be used for the perhaps more than 1 decade. And then maritime can move to bio-LNG or e-fuels and perhaps hydrogen, but well, technology for that is still in question. Regarding industry, we foresee that it will start being decarbonized by using more quantities of hydrogen, where it is possible, of course. Regarding residential, we see a role for biogas. I suppose people will not be very happy to change all their appliances and to move to, it's not something easy to move to other technologies. So biogas can be a solution, and then e-fuels or hydrogen perhaps. Regarding power generation, for sure, we will say that at least in our area, we see that natural gas has a future until some years at least, and then slowly move to hydrogen. Regarding the gas grids, what we see and what we support is what is actually supported by ENSOC. We see a role for each kind of gas. It can be methane coming from as a fossil fuel. It can be e-fuels, synthetic methane. It can be biogas for sure. This is something that has to be developed in our country, and then it will be hydrogen. But for sure, we see that infrastructures have to accommodate all these types and have to work in parallel. So blending, at least in the first steps, will be quite important, especially in Greece. How are we preparing ourselves and our network for the future? Regarding our current network, what
Mr. Panousos, we need to speed up.
Yes, it's the last one. Regarding the current network, first of all, we want to accommodate biogas production and hydrogen blends. So we are assessing the network. We will perform gap analysis and the necessary adaptations. Regarding future network and expansions, we are developing new specifications. So we will follow new standards so that everything is ready to accept 100% of hydrogen. And regarding our company, we are participating in different decarbonization projects and studies. We are developing our own long-term strategy, which will be discussed, of course, with all the industry sector and, of course, the regulator. We are participating in the White Dragon cluster project with our own proposal for the blending system and the dedicated hydrogen backbone. And we are developing testing facilities for equipment and other, we're also participating in pilot projects like a pyrolysis project. So just to keep in mind, last sentence, that also the networks for the future have to be developed in a technically sound, economically efficient way that best serves its user with safety, reliability, and adequacy. So the same principles have to be kept in the future. Thank you all, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Mr. Panousos, we thank you very much. We thank you very much because you have given all the information needed for about DESFA. Now, because we don't have enough time, I have a lot of questions to ask, but with a few words and with a very limited answer. First of all, from Mr. Satras. Mr. Satras, I understood from your presentation that the Dioriga project is going to be a hydrogen ready. Is that true?
Yes, definitely. Yes. This is our intention. We took the message even from last year, so the pipeline should be hydrogen ready. And the only problem is that you connect to the 1,400 kilometers of DESFA, and I hope in DESFA's next map there will be the connection with Dioriga, because we are just about to sign the connection. But the problem is not the 3 kilometers of Dioriga. Our pipeline is very short.
If the project is hydrogen ready, this is enough for EIB or EBRD for the financing of the project?
Very good question. We're examining these options for the financing of the project, but certainly these aspects, the aspects of compatibility for the new fuels or the low carbon fuels, should be an asset, should be a plus.
Okay.
We haven't solved this yet, and it needs to be solved.
Okay. The same question applies also to Mr. Papanastasiou. I mean, you are ready, you have secured some capital from European institutions, but what about, do you have some preconditions? For example, this project is going to be hydrogen ready also?
For the transmission system, is going to be designed to be hydrogen ready, but not the terminal per se. So in the future, for the financing of the transmission system, we could go to EBRD or an EIB and ask for financing, provided that we will show that our transmission system is hydrogen ready.
Only the transmission system, not yes. the LNG project itself.
The LNG project itself, no. We have already secured the financing for the LNG project, and the reason they gave us the financing, because it was a necessary step it's a transition step and necessary for Cyprus.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Do we have Mr. Panousos with us? No.
Yes, of course. Yes.
Okay. What about the Revithusa concerning just the same question? I mean, there is a matter of time that you are going to use their hydrogen. So, what are you thinking about that?
We're not talking about the pipeline, I suppose.
We're talking about yes, the LNG
facilities. No. Well, the liquid hydrogen is a completely different story. It cannot be accommodated in the same facilities as the LNG, because the conditions that are required by liquid hydrogen are completely different. The temperatures are completely different. So, no, the LNG facilities, as a general, it's an issue that has to be solved within Europe, so within the world, perhaps.
Mr. Satras, do you have a comment on it?
Actually, my position for hydrogen ready was definitely the transmission system, so it's the pipeline. And if you produce hydrogen in the refinery, which is the very next step to the pipeline, you can add also your hydrogen into the same pipeline. Yes, to liquid hydrogen, I agree with Mr. Panousos. You cannot use the same vessel for liquid hydrogen, but you can inject hydrogen on the pipeline from another system, from green hydrogen applications, for example, and you can inject it into the same network. So it's not the vessel, it's the pipeline.
Okay. Do we have Mr. Ellinas with us? No. Okay. I think now we are ending the session. I would like to thank all of you, and we have to continue with the next session. Thank you very much indeed. Bye bye.
Thank you very much, you too. Thank you.